Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Okay, he told the story, so I'll just stand here now. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate Ed and Tim inviting me to come here and speak. I don't like to stand on that thing because maybe I need to. Can you all see me? You can see me now? Up there's not light. Okay. Anyway, my name is Robert Borelli, but that wasn't always my name, and I'll explain that as I share some of my testimony. But let me just give you some information. As you could tell already, I'm not from Texas. Okay. So I have heard it said that if you rely on education, you'll get everything education will give you. So the reason why I'm saying that is I'm not a well-educated guy, so you're not going to get, that's good to have, but I don't have that. If you rely on eloquence, you get everything eloquence could give you. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. There's not too much eloquence in my speaking. But it also said if you rely on the Holy Spirit, you get everything God could give you. That's my strength. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate that. Well, yeah, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. It was a pretty tough neighborhood. It was a neighborhood that you had gangs all over the place. There was movies made called The Warriors back in the 80s. I know some of you are young, so you don't understand that. Or there's a movie called Goodfellas, which was another thing from my neighborhood, people that I knew and hung out with at the time. So in my neighborhood, I didn't hear racism. I didn't hear those kind of languages. But what I did hear was that you stayed with your own kind, and then when you got older, you married your own kind. And so our neighborhood was, if you went 4 blocks from out of your area to somebody else's area, chances were you're gonna have a fight. Because it was dissected in a way where you had Italians and Irish and Germans in one part of the neighborhood, then you would have blacks in one part, Spanish in another part, Jewish people in another part. So when you walked out of your neighborhood into somebody else's, chances were, what we used to say, if you came into my neighborhood, what are you doing on my turf? What are you doing in my neighborhood? You got trouble? You're trying to pick up one of our girls? What is that you're trying to do? And it would cause trouble. So I was raised Roman Catholic. My Catholic school was in a black Hispanic neighborhood. The public school that a lot of the blacks and Hispanics went to was right behind my house. So we had to cross paths just every day going back and forth to school. And I'd say probably 8 out of 10 times there was going to be an encounter or some kind of a fight or something like that. It's just the way it was. And we used to have this stupid stuff that back in them days made sense to us. It was called the punk test. So if I was walking and somebody else was walking towards me, one of us would have to move out of the way, and whoever moved out of the way was the punk. So basically you would bump into each other, and that's how your fight would start, because nobody wanted to be the punk. Now, of course, it sounds stupid then, but back in them days, it made a lot of sense to us for some reason. I don't know. But anyway, that's just kind of the neighborhood. But as I got a little bit older now, I was one of these young kids. Most of the kids in my neighborhood just maybe about a year or 2 years older than me, and I was a lot shorter than I am now, so just picture that there. So the kids, we didn't use the word bully. We said we would pick on somebody. So I would be one of the kids, because I was the smallest, that would get picked on. So in order for me to avoid that, I would have to use violence in a way where back in them days you fought with your hands, but I was small, so I would pick up a stick or a garbage pail cover, and that's how I would fight. And that would make people not want to mess with me so much, because they knew that I would pick up a stick and hit him in the head with it. So that was kind of, and listen to me, I'm not bragging about any of that there, trust me, it's just the way it was in my neighborhood. You know, that's just how it was, and I learned that and grew up in that lifestyle. But as I got a little bit older, we had 3 types of people that I could identify with, okay? Would be my family. My mom and dad had 4 children at that time, 4 children. One came about 8 years later, and I'll explain that a little bit. They worked really hard, but it was a poor neighborhood, and they had a hard time making ends meet. So a lot of times the arguments we would hear as I was growing up would be over finances. We didn't have enough money for this. We couldn't pay for this clothes to go to school and all that kind of stuff. So at an early age, I didn't want to grow up to be like my mom and dad. Now, I love them, but that's not the life that I would want for myself or for my children. And then you had, back in them days also, we had people coming back from the Vietnam War. And a lot of them were coming back. Now, these guys were a little bit older than me, but they were from my neighborhood. They were coming back, and they were messed up either with drugs or drinking and stuff like that. So I didn't want to be like them. But now you had these guys. There was a social club on my block. And the social club these guys would hang out in. And they get all the respect from everybody in the neighborhood. Now, I didn't know who they were at the time, except they were a bunch of guys that had a social club. And they would invite me in to shoot pool and play there and maybe serve sandwiches if they were having a card game. And as I started growing up with that lifestyle, I finally realized, and it was told to me, that my neighborhood was ran by the Gambino crime family. And when I say these guys got all the respect, everybody in the neighborhood, they protected the neighborhood. So nobody came into my neighborhood and started a lot of trouble that these guys weren't going to make it where they would never want to come back to the neighborhood again and start trouble. That's just how it was. My mom gave them a lot of respect. Police officers gave them a lot of respect. It was just that kind of thing. But they also had nice clothes. They had diamond rings. They had a fancy car. They had some pretty girls. And at an early age, that's what I would have wanted for me. And the other weird thing was I wanted that without having to go to school. Because I don't think they really went to school, at least not the way that I understood them. But anyway, long story short with that, so I started hanging out with them and doing things for them. And then as I got older, a little, they trust you a little bit more and things happen. Now, there's some sad parts of my life that I'm going to talk about, and I might cry. I just might, because I'm a rough, tough cream puff. At the age of 17 years old, I wind up hanging out with this kid in Queens. And he was the son of one of the big bosses of Brooklyn and Queens neighborhood in the mob. And I would hang out with him, and he would go to visit his dad on Friday nights, and he would bring me with him. And his father had this big, kind of like a spread like this here, serving food, and all these guys would come and pay him respect. They all had nice clothes. I mean, they were very wealthy guys. And here I am, a 17-year-old kid, sitting down at the table with all these big mafia guys, and I was very impressed with that. So I could tell you at an early age, some people in my neighborhood became firemen, became police officers. I wanted to be a gangster. I was very attracted to that lifestyle. And when I seen how much respect my friend's father was getting, I'm saying that's what I want. I want that, where people will come and pay me respect. That was a big thing for me. Respect and reputation was probably the biggest things I fought for almost all my life until God finally got a hold of me. Saying all that, at the age of 18 years old, I'll just give you this here. From 1973 to 1999, I was either running from the law, incarcerated, having cases pending. That was my whole life for those years. So in 1973, somebody came into our bar that we were hanging out in, and he got killed. And I was wanted for that. My friend's dad hid me out for a couple of years until that case kind of dissolved a little bit. When I came back into the neighborhood, my first arrest as an adult, at the age of 20 years old, was for 2 murders and possession of a weapon. That was the first time I was ever arrested. And at the age of 20 years old, now it's a lot different today, but back then that was like, you didn't hear that too much. So I laid up in jail for a while, kept my mouth shut, did everything that I was schooled to do throughout all these times, hanging out with these guys. And when they finally got enough money to bail me out or got me in front of the right judge that would give me a bail. I got bailed out, and then I would get paraded around all over the neighborhood, even in Mulberry Street, as the up-and-coming star in their Gambino crime family. That's a reputation I had to live up to now. So now I'm living not so much for myself anymore, but for the reputation that everybody placed on me. So I have to live the lifestyle that they already gave me some kind of respect for, and that was my life. So I did that most of my life. I made money, you know. I was a bad gambler. I had a lot of addiction at that time, drinking and gambling and stuff like that. So I'm hanging one time I'm in Mulberry Street. We have this dice game in the back of this thing. Now, in New York, those things are illegal. So we're having this game, and this one guy, now I've been working there for a couple of years, and this one guy comes in, really sharp-dressed guy. And I have to tell you, he loses between $5,000 and $10,000. Back in this night, like in 1975, 1976, in about 10 minutes. Now I gambled. Now if I lost $25, I was very upset. This guy showed no expression, and it just caught my attention. So after he loses the money that he has in his pockets, he goes to one of the bosses in the game, and he says, could I send Robert out to my car to get a package? And they say, yeah. So he gives me the keys. I go out. It's a brand new spanking Jaguar. I mean, this car was beautiful. And in the back seat, there's a brown paper bag. Now, of course, being the stand-up guy, I don't look at the bag. I just take the bag and bring it to him, being very respectful. And it just was more money. Now, I don't know if he got his money back. He lost it all. I don't really remember that. But I was so impressed by all of that from this one gentleman that at the end of the game, I asked my guys, I said, what does this guy do that he could lose that kind of money and it doesn't even bother him? And they said, he's one of the biggest drug dealers in Harlem. And that gets my attention. Okay, now I want to be able to, not that I would want to lose the money, but I would want to be in the position to have that kind of money, the Jaguar and all that. So I got involved with the coke business. And it wasn't too long that the coke business got involved with my business. And little by little, I don't know, some of you are young and not gonna know this, some of you might remember, back in the 70s, Richard Pryor had an accident with freebasing cocaine. He made a couple of movies about that. So I was getting really bad with sniffing cocaine, that I would stay off for 2-3 days straight. And then, of course, everybody that was giving me the coke, and then I had to pay them, they weren't getting their money because I was using it for myself. So freebasing came around, and I tried it once, and I did a little bit, then went home and went to sleep, and I said, okay, this is better than snorting coke, so I thought. But then I got addicted to the freebasing. Before you know it, that's taken. So everything that I fought so hard for, my reputation, the money, and all these things that I fought and lived in the streets as a gangster, I was slipping away. And I was starting to lose everything. Then crack cocaine came around, where it was the cheapest high you could possibly get. And I succumbed to crack cocaine. That time, my girlfriend, about 1992, got pregnant with my daughter. In 93, my daughter was born. I was in a rehab trying to clean up my act, and I asked them to let me out. Now, everything I did was connections, that I had connections. It's not like I really was going to these places. I just had a way of getting things done for me because people knew me and knew my reputation a little bit. So they let me out for my daughter's birth, and I watched my daughter be born. I have to tell you, I cried like a little baby. I never experienced something like that. And I just felt that now I had something to be responsible for. I had someone that I needed my love, because I was so full of self-love. I was a very selfish person all my life. So I figured that was going to change my life. The problem with that, it wasn't so much of any of that. I was the problem. I wanted the consequences to be taken away, but not the lifestyle. I didn't want to change my lifestyle. So when my daughter comes home, 7 weeks after she's home, I have an argument with her mother. Now, I'm clean at the time, and I say, you know what, the heck with this, I'm gonna go out, and I think I'm gonna just get high that night to remove all the argument and all the stress that was going on, and I'll come back home the next day, and it didn't happen. You know, the saying in AA or any 12-step program is, one is too many, 1,000's not enough, and that was how it went for me. And because of the shame and the guilt, I had to stay high constantly because I couldn't. If I started crashing, all this guilt and this shame would fall on me, and I couldn't deal with it, so I had to keep numbing it and numbing it. So I lived that way for a long time, just getting high. And then I cleaned up again, and the guys that I was around made a suggestion, but basically when they made a suggestion, it really wasn't a suggestion. It was them giving you an offer you shouldn't refuse kind of thing. And they sent somebody with a plane ticket. They said, you need to, my mom had moved to Florida. They said, you need to go live with your mom. You need to get out of the neighborhood. They didn't, just, I was an embarrassment to them. I was the up-and-coming star. Now everybody see me as Robert the crackhead. So that was an embarrassment to all of them. So I take the plane ticket, I go live with my mom, I clean myself up, I get a job, and who comes? These guys come to Florida, and they give me some stuff to do in Florida, and before you know it, I'm back on crack cocaine again. And my poor mom had to suffer through a lot of these stuff that we went through. And for the first time, my mom said, Robert, you can't stay here anymore. It's the first time. I'm about 40 years old. And she says, you can't stay here no more. And I go back to New York, and I'm supposed to go into a rehab place that we set up. And as soon as I landed, I would go into a rehab and clean myself up again. But I met a friend, and I never went to the rehab. And I became completely homeless, living in the streets of New York City. Not the city, but the borough, Queens and Brooklyn. And that was my life. I found out that the FBI wanted me for things that I did with these guys in Florida. I already had a case pending for selling crack cocaine to another cover agent. I ran away from both of those things, and I was up in somebody's apartment, and I fell out. I was up for probably like 2 weeks, and I just passed out, blacked out. And I get a tap on my shoulder, and I get two angels visit me. Oh, no, they didn't have halos. They were warrant officers. I was wanted for that. Guns pointed to my head. They said, you're under arrest. I call them angels today because that was the last time I had a drink or a drug. So, unfortunately, they don't know it. Hopefully, maybe they heard my story somewhere. They know that they rescued me in a sense. But I think God was finally trying to get my attention that he's been trying to do throughout my lifestyle. So I'm laid up in Rikers Island, and of course I was homeless, so I don't have anything, I don't have any money. But I've been in and out of prisons most of my life, so I have a rule that I had in my own mind. I have to get myself a good attorney to get me out of the mess I got myself into. That worked for me a lot. But also I know I'm not getting bail, so I have to get commissary money in my account so I can live as comfortable as I can while I'm incarcerated. Those were the two things I wanted to do. I needed, that I always planned on. And then I would stay in my cell and I would read. Robert Ludlum was my favorite author, and I would read a lot of espionage books. So now I'm making phone calls, and I'm calling up people trying to get help. My mom, everybody, see if anybody would help me get an attorney. And people are giving me the brush off. This one girl, who was a real good friend of mine, said, why don't you go read your Bible? And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, that's going to get me an attorney and get me money. That doesn't even make sense to me. But my daughter's mom, after not being able to see my daughter when I walked out of her life, was allowing me to talk to her over the phone. So I'm talking to my daughter, and this one time I'm talking to her, she's crying. And I said, Brianna, why are you crying? I'm sorry. She said, because you won't come and see me. All the guilt, the shame just hit me like a ton of bricks. Still today I could feel that. My heart just shattered, and I didn't want the people in Rikers Island to see me crying. I slammed down the phone, ran back to my cell. And as I told you earlier, I was raised Roman Catholic, so I knew about God. I didn't have a relationship with him, but I knew there was a God. So I ran back to my cell, and I gave God an ultimatum. I said, either have somebody kill me or change me. I can't live with this pain anymore. Now, I think if I could have got a drink or a drug at that point in time, I probably would have took that. So I seen God as my only choice. And actually, you can see he did the latter because I'm still here talking to you. And I just cried with tears flowing down my eyes, on my knees. God, please help me. God, please help me. And I believe in my heart that God answered the sincerity of my heart at that point in time. And I became born again. I didn't know nothing about repentance, nothing like that. But something inside of me said I needed to get that Bible and read what that girl said way back then. So I started getting the Bible and reading it. So I read a little bit, then I get my Robin London books. And there was something inside that said, you need less of those books and more of my book. And I just kept on reading the Bible. Now my mom's talking to my mom over the phone. And she says to me, this FBI agent keeps coming by the house, bothering me about you. And I said, give me his phone number. So she gives me the phone number. I call him up. And he says to me, if you cooperate with us, we'll help you. Just to let you know that in my mind, I know I'm never going to be the gangster I wanted to be, that drug period of my life. I mean, I could have got back around it, but I never could have been the guy that I wanted to be in that lifestyle. And I know so many times being in and out of prisons, I was back on crack cocaine. So I just seen I'm probably Robert the crackhead. I'm probably going to die like this here. I felt like a hopelessness in my life. So when he gave me that offer, I said, okay, what do I need to do? He said, if you cooperate with us, we'll recommend that you go into the witness protection program and you can get a whole new life. And I thought that was the best deal I could have got. In other words, I think God was using them to speak to a language that I could understand. They gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I accepted that there, and they cooperate with us. Now, you think that I have God on my side and I have the government on my side, and things would get a little bit easier. But the first place they placed me, they take me from Rikers Island, they ship me to Miami-Dade County Jail, and I'm in segregation. I'm locked up for 23 hours a day. I could only come out for a shower or for exercise. That's it, for 1 hour a day. But I had a TV and a phone. And I would just watch nothing but Christian evangelists. I won't watch nothing else. And the phone would be from me and my mom to just talk to my mom and try to comfort her as much as I can, because she was very worried about her son. Then they find out where I am in that jail, and the government says, we have to move you, and they move me to another place. And the other place they bring me in, there's 2 Bible studies. And then I get sentenced, and they bring me to Sandstone, Minnesota, and there's 4 Bible studies. What I say that there is you can see how the Spirit of God was direct, because I have no say where I'm going. When the corrections of the Department of Corrections move you, you have no say where you're going. Like, you just see the Spirit of God moving. I got such a hunger and a thirst to know more about this Jesus Christ that saved me. The one that gave his life for me. Now I want to give him my life. And that's how it started. So now I get released, and the marshals are supposed to pick me up from Sandstone, Minnesota, and they bring me someplace. I can't tell you where it is because I don't even remember where it was, but they fly me either to Maryland or Virginia, somewhere around there. And if you ever want to scare an old wise guy, put him in a van with no windows. That'll get his attention. So they walk me into this van. There's no windows because I can't see where I'm going. They don't want me to know where I'm going. And they bring me into this building. I go up the stairs. They place me into this apartment kind of thing. And they said, this is where you're going to stay until we evaluate you. And they have to evaluate you because they're going to give you a whole new identity. Now, I don't know how they do it. They said to me, you could keep your first name, but you have to change your last name. So I said, all right, and I gave him a name, and then, no, that's no good. And this happened back and forth for a time, and I happened to be watching on TV this show called MASH. On this show, one episode, they have to send for a doctor outside of the MASH unit to come to the MASH unit to do some kind of emergency surgery, and he happened to be Dr. Borelli. So when they came in, I said, Borelli, and they came back, they said, that's your name. Now, the only regret I had is I should have said Dr. Borelli. Maybe I could have came out with a PhD, you know? But anyway. So that's how the name got changed. I was raised Robert Engel, a German last name. My mom was Italian, so I took more of the Italian side. And wanted to always be Italian anyway, so I took the Borelli name anyway, and that's how it started. So now comes the interesting part. Because, as I'm reading the Bible, because that my whole life was into the Bible. I didn't watch anything else. I didn't read anything else, and I still don't today, to be honest with you. So I read in Genesis, I believe it's chapter 12, where God tells Abraham to leave his surroundings and place him in a foreign land. Well, they shipped me to San Antonio, Texas. And I don't know if you get any further foreign than that there for a guy from New York City. So anyway, so I'm there all by myself. So there's two things that I'm very concerned. The government tells you, we help you get on your feet. We get you a new identity. We get you everything you need, but then you have to be on your own. And my thought is, what am I going to do? Everything I did was criminal activity or connection or something around the environment that I was in. So what am I going to do? I don't have an education. I don't have a trade. I was so afraid. And then God just gave me Matthew chapter 6, verses 25 through 34. And through 25, he's talking about the birds of the air, the lilies of the field, how he provides for them. And then chapter on 6:33, it says, seek first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. And I had to just stand on that promise. And let me just tell you, from then until today, God has never disappointed. He was faithful through it all. He provided in ways that I could give you so many different wild ways, and we'll be here all day talking about it. For that point in time, that was back in 1999, and now we are in 2024. I have not missed paying a bill. And a lot of things happened since then. So I say that to say this, that after a while, I'm talking to this girl that said, go read the Bible. I ministered to her when I was in prison, and she gave her life to Christ. Matter of fact, she's a pastor now in New York. And I'm talking with her while I'm in San Antonio. Of course, I'm very lonely, and I'm praying for a spouse. And she meets this girl at some kind of Christian event that they went to. And she calls me up. She said, you think if I gave this girl your phone number, you might want to talk with her? And I said, yeah, why not? I said, she just can't know where I am. Or this girl knew my name, but she can't know my real name, my old name. And she said, okay, I'll just ask her if she wants it. So I got the phone. I dated this girl for 5 months over the phone. We fell in love with each other's heart over the phone. Now, I see how I have to explain this without offending somebody. Because in my culture, you really didn't go out with somebody that was taller than you. You know, if the girl was taller, it didn't seem right. So I'm praying for somebody shorter than me. My wife is praying for somebody taller than she is. My wife is 5'10" and a half. Now, I don't know this, and we're dating over the phone, but we really fell in love with each other's heart. So there comes a point in time where she drove a school bus in New York City. They pay you for the whole day, even if you work just a couple of hours. But she had the Christmas vacation that all the school people get. So I invited her, which I wasn't supposed to do because I was still in the witness protection program. I sent her a ticket and asked if she'd come to San Antonio for the week of finally meet. She's from New York City. We knew about each other, but we didn't know each other. So she comes in, I make sure that we play it right. She goes, stays with my family minister, and I stay in my apartment. We wanted to keep this right according to God's eyes, and we did do that. Praise God for that. But when I met her at the airport, it was a little awkward situation. And then anyway, so we finally got together. We did. So I had no intentions of anything. I mean, she's too tall. I mean, we fell in love with each other's heart. That's great and all that. But now, after 10 days, she's going back home. And she wants to take me out to eat for her way to say thank you for being with her. And I just get on my hands and knees. And I mean, like if you're in the neighborhood, you say, hey, I can give you a call, I'll see you later, something like that. But no, she's going to be 12,000 miles away or whatever, 2,500 miles away. So I said, God, what am I supposed to say? And he said, you need to ask her to marry you. And I said, what? Because I wasn't attracted. And he said, you'll never find someone to love you the way she'll love you. And regardless of everything I was thinking, and in spite of myself, I wanted to listen to him because I knew he knew a lot better than I did. After all, I've messed up a lot. So I went, she takes me to dinner. I don't have a ring or anything, and I just say, will you marry me? And she says, yes. So she has to pack up everything back home, and I don't know what I don't want to lie, so I'm trying to be respectful as much as I can. I know what I was thinking, so I gave her 6 weeks to come to San Antonio and marry me because I can't go to New York. So she goes back home. In Italian culture, you didn't move away from your neighborhood. You didn't move away from your family. And she has to tell all them, I met this guy in Texas. I can't tell you who it is. And we're going to marry him. It didn't feel well with anybody. So she had what they call I don't even know what you call it, like an apartment that you buy an apartment in a high rise. So she had to sell that. Without a real estate agent, she goes to her church. She brings her friend home from church, and the lady says to her, if you're ever going to sell this, I'll buy it off you. No real estate agent, no nothing. Long story short, she sells everything. She comes. I do the wedding. I get everything ready for the wedding in San Antonio, and we get married. It's 23 years now. So God knew what he was doing. Amen? But my heart was in ministry, so I did nursing home ministry for 13 years. I did it twice a week in San Antonio. I went to a nursing home. And when I seen those people in the nursing home, it reminded me of prison. It really did. I know that a lot of them aren't getting out of there without a tag on their toe, so to speak. And in my Catholic culture that I thought, I would say that would be like a purgatory for them, because most of them, that's going to be the last chance they're ever going to get to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. I left out something because my mom had terminal cancer when I was in prison. And when I got out, my mom passed away while I was in the witness protection program. I didn't know she passed away until 3 days after because nobody knew where I was to get in touch with me. Finally, the marshals got in touch with me to tell me. But because I was in the witness protection program, I wasn't even allowed to go to the funeral. So I never got any real closure. My mom was here one day. The last picture I have of my mom is through a plexiglass. This is the last time I encountered my mom. Plexiglass, and we speaking to each other over the phone back in '97 was the last time I had an encounter with my mom. That's the memory that stuck in there. So I cried out to God at that point in time, like, how, I don't understand this here. I mean, if anybody needed this love, this agape love that you gave me, it's my mom. I needed to give her that. And I felt God telling me, you could give it to others, and that's how nursing home ministry was birthed in me, that I wanted to give that love to all those people in the nursing home. And I did that there for 3 years in San Antonio. And then people found out where I was back home, and a friend of mine knew Pat Robinson, and he explained the situation of Pat Robinson. He said, well, if he really wants to go into ministry, let him go to Christ for the Nations. I didn't know nothing about Christ for the Nations, but I know that I had a hunger and a thirst for more of Jesus. So we packed up and we moved to Dallas, Texas, Christ for the Nations. And I did nursing home ministry there for like 10 years. And then after a while, people were saying, with the story you have, you need to be getting out there more and reaching more people. So I handed it off to somebody else. They're still doing that nursing home ministry. But I felt God is calling me to reach lost people today, people who might be in tough situations, or even some of us Christians who do the church thing and really don't have a relationship. My heart breaks for them too. I'm not trying to be critical. I'm sharing my heart with you. My heart goes for a lot of people that are in the pews. They're very religious, but they don't have a relationship. And this is what I think. And it makes me cry to think about it. Because can you picture? You're going to church, you're doing all these things that you think you're supposed to do. And then you get up thinking you're heaven bound, and he says, get away from me, I never knew you. I can't picture that. So my heart goes out to them, that they have to have that personal relationship. It's not what you do that saves you. It's what already has been done for you. And what you do is the byproduct of because you're saved, not to gain or earn your salvation. It's already there, and you're just living it out in your life. And then the lost people like I was, the drug addict, the homeless guy, I was all of that. The gangbanger, all of those people, man. This is what I tell you today. Never give up on them. I was one of them. And if God could take me and do what he's done with me, he could do it for everybody. Matter of fact, it's already done for them. All they have to do is believe it and receive it. And they too can be saved. So what do I do now? I go around and speaking as much as I can, wherever I can. There's certain things I hear people say, well, you need to pray about this, but there's certain things that I believe if God's opened up a door to share Jesus Christ with any type of group, then I'm going to do it. I don't need to pray about that. I don't think Satan wants me to do it, that's for sure. So people ask this certain question. They say, aren't you afraid? You're out there now, you're in the witness protection program, you're not being protected anymore. Aren't you afraid that these guys will come back and do something? And my answer, I spoke to it a little bit earlier, but the true answer is, in the beginning, yes. But I look at my life, I say, I can't lose. If I get killed, I'm going to be with the Lord. And if I don't get killed, I'm going to do the work that he's called me to do. So it's a win-win situation, right? I believe if we make fear come into our lives, it will be like a headlight in a deer's eyes. It'll prevent us from doing the things God has called us to do. So I don't live like that anymore. I just go where God calls me to do. I do go to New York. I don't go in the streets. I don't go to social clubs and preach Jesus to them. But if they invited me, I might do that someday. I'm not sure. But anyway, so I go around doing these things. If you get, there's some information there. There's a book there. I didn't write the book. I can't even write my name, never mind the book. But we had somebody, I was a ghostwriter, do it. His name is H. Scott Hunt. First time he ever wrote a book, and that's the book that he wrote. So they're giving that away, and then there's a friend of mine that's giving a book. But there's information there about me, what I do. We have the possibility. I met with somebody a couple of days ago, and the possibility of maybe doing a movie, or what I want is more of an episodic kind of thing where we could do an 8-week episode where people could follow. I think there's too much of 43 years of no Jesus, and then 20-something years of Jesus. Cramp it into an hour and a half. It's going to be tough. I want to tell the whole story, so hopefully maybe we can get something like an episode's done, like maybe 8 weeks, where they could follow the character, not me, the character, the bad guy, and just see how God could transform and change anyone's life. So if you could pray with me about that. We'll be having a fundraiser September 7th. I could let you know more about it. We're just trying to raise funds to make all these things possible. I want to reach as many people as I can. Our country, our world is falling apart, man. I wish I could tell you there is good news. His name is Jesus Christ. But if we don't get the good news out there, we're going to still have to face all this bad news. And our world is falling apart right in front of our eyes. And I'm one of the guys that, like, if I was back in the neighborhood, that's not going to happen. Well, I'm that guy today, the only for the Lord. I'm not going to allow that to happen. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get the message and the hope and the love of Jesus Christ to whoever I possibly can. And I go around and I speak, and there's certain things I can do. But I think if we could get it out there on social media, out there maybe where everybody could see it, we could change a lot more lives than me just being one place at one time. So I thank you for allowing me to be here, man. I really do. I appreciate it. God bless you all. Information's there if you ever want to know more information. Thank you.